Hey, y'all. Welcome to the very first episode of the Subliminal Signals podcast. Now, listen, I have already recorded this a couple of times. I tried once doing these kind of walk and talk podcasts, and it was okay, but when I was editing it, the sound was weird because, of course, I was outside walking. So even with my mics, it was still like over a long period of time, it was a little rough. So I decided to come into the office and record them here. So, welcome. My name is Carlton Matthews, and I am the co founder of Kaleidoscope Coaching Services along with my wife, Dee. We are mindset coaches. I specialize in hypnotherapy. She specializes in a technique called eutaptics, and we help people rewrite the subconscious stories that they tell themselves so that they can find success as they define it. But that's not what this podcast is about. I mean, it is, but it isn't. So if you found this podcast, chances are you know the feeling of like trying to get past your biggest obstacle, something that you're trying to accomplish. You've got these voices, quiet voices in your head that sound reasonable. And those are the things that we help people with. They're loops that just you seem to be stuck in. They're the same limitations that seem to be coming over and over and over again. And I need to move my camera monitor out of the way, or else I'm going to stare at it the whole time. Um, those sneaky thoughts that masquerade as wisdom, but the things actually hold us back. And we're going to give you practical tools to reset them. So I'm going to spend each week, each episode going over what I call a subliminal signal. And this week is one that has totally hits home for me. And it's been probably hitting you too. It's the thought that I should be further along now. I like to call it the thought that almost stopped everything. I mean, because this one's really personal for me. Let me take you back, like, if you put our get in our time machine or just kinda go back a little bit. Some years ago, I was at a church, and it was time for me to speak, and I was going to be, speaking along with some other folks, and I just was having this moment, right? Like, I'm always nervous, when I have to speak in public, especially when it's time, especially when it's time for me to speak. It's something that has been hitting me since I was a little kid. But that's not specifically what was going on in that moment. I mean, we were there were other pastors there, everybody was going to be talking. And I just felt really inadequate in that moment. I mean, my hands were sweating, my chest was tight, my legs were bouncing up and down. The only thought that was going through my head in that moment was, you're not ready for this moment. You should have had more of this figured out already. Look at all the other folks that have spoken already, or the people that are going to speak after you. They're way further ahead than you are. You should be further along than where you are right now. Does that sound familiar to you? Like, have you ever had that thought in your head that you should be further along? And I'll tell you, in that moment, I was ready to leave. Like, I was like, I can't. Like, this is not something that I'm going to be able to do. I almost walked out. I mean, seriously, I'm not joking. I had my keys in my hand. I was ready to just kind of walk out of that back door, drive home, forget about this whole thing. Um, you know, uh, in that moment, it everything, the thought, like where I was, it felt so true. It was like logical. Like, of course you shouldn't be up there. Like, you're still trying to figure this thing out. You got to wait until you have it all together. But here's the thing, and why I'm sharing this story. If I had listened to that thought, if I hadn't gone through that moment, really pushed my way through, um, I would have given up a huge opportunity, not an opportunity to like puff myself up, but an opportunity to serve in a way that I know I should have. Um, I mean, look, I stayed, of course. I didn't walk away. My wife would have never let me leave anyway. But it was real. I gave the talk, the sermon, the speech, whatever you want to call it. Like I made it through. And in the end, I had a couple of people that actually came up to me and told me how big of an impact the words that I gave that day had on their lives, at least in that moment. And so I know now, of course, that that feeling is not real. It's not a fact. And I also know that you've got to push through those moments in order to in order to grow. And here's why that thought is so dangerous. It paralyzes you in the moment. I remember being like stuck, like I don't want to get up, I can barely breathe, and my everything was just weird. But there's science behind this, right? So when your brain perceives a threat, and shame and judgment, as wild as it sounds, your brain perceives that the same way as if somebody was, you're being chased by a tiger, right? That prefrontal cortex, the thing that gives you the ability to think creatively, all your executive function, your problem solving, like that just shuts down and goes offline. Like, you freeze up. That's why you stall. You will find yourself doing things to just kinda make it through. Like, this is where scrolling, that, like, doom scrolling activity comes from, right? You're just kinda floating because it feels like you're doing something, but in all honesty, you're scared and you're stuck and you're not actually doing anything. Instead of working on your project or researching how to start something for the 100th time, you're just kind of looking for an answer, but you're not actually taking action. And look, I see this pattern all the time. Someone has a great idea for a business, but they think, I should know more about marketing first. Someone wants to change careers, but they think, I should have started this transition 5 years ago. Someone wants to write a book, start a podcast, launch a course, but they think, I should be more of an expert before I put myself out there. Look, again, let me point, instead of pointing my fingers out, I'll point my fingers in, right? My wife and I started this company, Kaleidoscope, last year, late last year. But I had been toying with this idea of formally starting a company for years. But I felt like I needed to figure out how to get it done, how to get the perfect website, how to, what's the perfect automation for this and what should my color scheme be? But the cruel irony was that I really wasn't taking any action because I was afraid. And then it perpetuated the cycle because then I start my company and I go, man, I should have already been further along in this moment. So I can tell you that, with my own experience, that getting beyond the "I should be further along" idea is so important. And I've had this happen with other people too. So I worked with someone, this is before our formal company, right? And this person was, had a great business idea, but wouldn't get started. Kept trying to start. I'm going to start. I'm trying to get started. For 3 years, she had been trying to like get this business up and off the ground. But she spent so much time like going back to the drawing board, redesigning her website, rebranding, anything but the thing that was most important, actually getting and serving clients. And so as I kinda dug deeper with her, kinda discovered, that the coaches she was comparing herself to were those businesses that had been around for a long time. Like, she's looking at the big names and being upset that she's not there. And this was real for me as well. Like, I can honestly say that this was where I was. I was like, well, I want to have the best camera setup. I want to have and then this is when I was trying to do video game streaming. I was like, I gotta have the best camera setup. I gotta have this. I gotta have this technology, this capture card, this thing, right? I kept accumulating stuff, but not actually doing the work. And I'm sure this is probably familiar for you as well. You're comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 15. and your first draft to their published book. You got to understand that your practice session is not someone else's performance. And that's really what I shared with this person. I was like, look, comparison is not information, it's distortion. When you compare your internal experience, all your doubts, fears, and uncertainties to someone else's external presentation, their highlight reel, hello? That Instagram feed is the best shots. It's not all of the work that went into making it happen. It's not the retakes. It's not the ugly faces. It's not the early videos. Stop comparing your behind the scenes to the actual produced show of somebody else. So what do we do about it? Let's flip that script. We're going to flip the script right now. Here's your reset. And I want you to say this out loud with me. I'm exactly where I need to be to reset. Say it again. I'm exactly where I need to be to reset. And let your nervous system catch up. Let's do some breathing along with that. So, not just saying it out loud, but I want you to calm that threat detection that I mentioned earlier. Taking a deep breath and hold it for 4 seconds. And hold it for 2 more and blow out for 7. And say to yourself, I'm not behind, I'm resetting. Do that several times, reset your nervous system. And this is why it works. Instead of judging where you are, you're accepting where you are as the perfect starting point for where you want to be. Instead of shame, you're choosing curiosity. Instead of pressure, you're choosing not pleasure. Instead of pressure, you're choosing presence. And this isn't just positive thinking, right? This isn't woo woo. This is practical neuroscience. When you shift from judgment to acceptance, that prefrontal cortex that I mentioned earlier, it comes back online. Your creativity kicks in. Your problem solving abilities start to work. You are literally thinking better when you stop telling yourself you should be thinking better by now. And I want so here's here's something that I want to give you that I always thought that I needed before I realized the truth. Here's permission for you to be exactly where you are. Permission to start messy. I promise you, it's better to get the cringe out of the way now when nobody's looking. Permission, I'm giving you permission to go figure it out. Figure it out as you go. You know what successful people have in common? It's not that they were further along when they got started, it's that they gave themselves permission to start anyway. I told this story to a mentorship group that I'm in, and you can probably find it on my personal YouTube channel. I have like the very first video that I ever made. I was sitting in my old office in our old house. I looked like I was shooting it through like a potato. I don't know what was up with the camera. The mic was terrible, but I actually talked about stinking first. Like that was the point. I wanted to remind people not to despise those small beginnings. You should stink first. It's okay to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. And don't worry about it. You're not too late. You're not behind. There are people who write books at 60 and 70. There are people who do start weightlifting in the later parts of their lives. Heck, I got myself in shape in my mid to late 40s, right? So no matter where you are, there are people who go back to school at 35, 45, 55, right? They are not behind because they're younger. There are other people there that are younger. They bring a perspective and motivation that makes their learning richer and more purposeful. I tell my I had told my, oldest daughter, who is now 21, and I would tell her all the time that youth is wasted on the young. What I wouldn't give to have the energy that they have at the age that they are, but my perspective. because there's a lot I could do with that amount of energy, but the perspective that I have with some experience behind me. Something my dad used to say all the time. So your timeline is not anyone else's timeline. Your path is not anyone else's path. And your behind might actually be your advantage. So where do we go from here? How do we actually start moving when this thought pattern has been keeping you stuck? First, catch yourself when you have that thought that I should be further along. As soon as that thought comes up, don't judge it, just notice it. Say, "Oh, there's that thought again. Thanks for trying to protect me, but I've got this." I literally just got off of a call with a client, and we were talking about, how you have to understand that your mind, your subconscious mind, is trying to keep you safe. That's what that whole pattern matching thing in the brain does. It's trying to keep you safe. Now, it also wants to keep you doing the same things. So that safety often comes at a cost of growth. So as you try and change, your mind resists because it wants to keep you in the same cycle because it feels that the repetition, the comfort is safe. But it's okay. Acknowledge it. Hey, I see that you're trying to keep me safe. But look, I've got this. I can handle this. So after you've done that, then I want you to say to yourself or ask yourself, if I accepted that I'm exactly where I need to be right now, what's the smallest step that I could take forward towards my goal? Not the perfect step, not the giant leap, but the smallest, most doable step. And then third, remember that progress isn't linear. Sometimes you need to go slow to go fast. Sometimes you've got to go backwards to go forwards. Sometimes the detour is the actual path. So here's your homework for this week. Here's what I want you to practice. Every time you catch yourself thinking I should be further along, I want you to pause and do this reset. Take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in for 4, breathe and hold it for 2, and then breathe out for 7. And say, I'm exactly where I need to be to reset. Then ask yourself, what's one small step I can take from here? And then, most important, take the step, even if it's imperfect. That's it. Simple, but not easy. Like most things that actually work. So if this resonates with you, I know it does with me because I lived it. I want to invite you to join our community, the Story Shift Circle. It's a free school community where we go deeper with tools like this every day. I'm often running what I call the 3-day challenge. You can actually take the 3-day challenge ad hoc. It's already there in the community. You just go into the classroom and click 3-day challenge. But every now and then I'll run them live, and I'd love to have you there. The link should be in the show notes, and I'd love to see you in the community. Because here's the truth, you don't have to figure this out alone. That's the key. You don't have to go it alone. And you definitely don't have to wait until you're further along to start connecting with people who get it. So, thanks for being with me today and for listening and being willing to look at these patterns that most people just accept as the way things are. And remember, you're not behind, you're not broken, you're not less than because you haven't reached someone else's milestone yet. You're exactly where you need to be to start rewriting your story. I'll see you next week with another subliminal signal that's probably running in the background of your mind right now. Until then, keep resetting.